as we talk about these things, I want to emphasize that if you feel uncomfortable or triggered or unsafe in any way, you may want to pause this episode and come back to it, or process it with a friend. It's really important to keep ourselves safe and to be gentle and gracious and not try to force something, whether trying to force a connection in our heads or trying to force a certain result. This is all about curiosity and compassion, as Jay Stringer has taught us. This is about learning and loving. It's about really looking at what's there, listening to what it has to teach us, and then loving, receiving God's love, loving each other, and loving ourselves.
Yeah, well said. Good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So last time we spoke, we were talking about just this reality that our fantasies, our sexual arousal doesn't come out of nowhere. And oftentimes the things that we feel most ashamed about, most overpowered by, actually provide clues, hints. I think Jay Stringer put it in one place, kind of breadcrumbs to really important, valuable parts of our story, of our lives, even of our the goodness in us. And it's just gotten twisted up and confused. But there is something still in us that's longing for that wholeness, that's still reaching for it. And our sexual fantasies, as crazy as it might sound to those of us who've never explored this, are actually trying to point to something really good and actually are a gift to us when they're rightly understood. So last time you talked about how sexual fantasy is seeking to turn fear into safety. So if you didn't hear that, listen to the last episode. But there are two more. And the second one you said was turning shame into glory. So tell us about that, Drew.
Yes. All of us have some level of shame. And in a sexual fantasy, it gives us the chance to be someone else. So one question you can ask to discover how might my sexuality or my sexual fantasy relate to my shame is, well, what are you ashamed of? What do you believe about yourself that is negative? And especially, what did you believe about yourself when you were young, when you were a little boy or when you were a little girl? What did other people tell you about yourself? Who did you see yourself as? And then in the fantasy, who do you get to be? I find this to be true so often, that what we are sexually attracted to in others are qualities that we ourselves possess but don't see in ourselves. If you're drawn to gentleness and tenderness, what if it's actually your own gentleness and tenderness that you have disowned or that you haven't fully appreciated? If you are drawn to somebody who's charismatic and confident, could it be that you are actually deep down a charismatic, confident person, but you don't realize it? Could it be that the things that we don't see in ourselves are the things that we have then sexualized? I often find this is the case with men who are attracted to other men. It's not so much that they are drawn to men so much as that they're drawn to a version of themselves that they've been cut off from, or that they haven't fully connected with. For example, for someone, it might be a man who is incredibly kind and loving. For another one, it might be a man who is incredibly tough and stereotypically masculine. Some would say, well, that's showing you what you don't have. But I actually believe it's showing you what you do have and what God has put in you that you need to reclaim. And so in that sense, the fantasy is giving you an identity. Who are you in it? What are you doing? Are you the hero of the story? Are you being rescued? Are you the pursuer? Are you the one who is maybe receiving the act, or are you performing the act? You know, maybe in the fantasy, you are bringing pleasure to someone else. Could it be that you are actually a delightful man and you don't realize it? And you think that you have to work so hard to please others just for them to not despise you? Or maybe the fantasy is of you being pleased by someone else. So all of these different dynamics are unique for each of us. And that's why there's so much power in the particularity. We can't just deal with porn in general or fantasies in general. We have to get into the details. And when we do, what we find is quite amazing. Michael Bader, who was one of the first people to write about sexual fantasies, along with Patrick Carnes way back in the 90s, he said that a fantasy is kind of like a microchip. In this one small little thing, it holds so much data. But we need the right code, or we need to be able to interpret that data. And these categories can help with that. Where's the shame, and what is the glory that God put in you underneath it all?
Wow. I recognized a long time ago that, and just kind of noticed that I was different in the fantasy. Like if I was in a fantasy, I was different. Or if my sexual acting out involved me pretending to be someone different, or, I was taller, different eye color, whatever. So I started asking the question, like, what's that about? But I don't think I'd ever thought before now, Drew, that like I always seen that as like, okay, this is where I feel like I'm lacking. This is what I want to be. But you're suggesting not just that, but like also it's revealing something about you. And I didn't hear you say this, but almost like the subtext is, well, yeah, that's why it's so powerful. It's like something in you is saying like come alive. Like, I can't bury this part of me,
Yes.
And so if we didn't, if the messages we heard, the wounds we received, the tapes we keep running, keep pushing these things about ourselves, the glory down, then the sexual fantasy is like, well, I'm going to spring up out of the concrete from somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
So I have to sit with that for a little bit.
Well, it's amazing. And this is why we don't try to remove our fantasies or try to force them to change, because what a beautiful, amazing creation of God is down there if we can just understand it. Here's an example from one of my fantasies. So in one of my deepest, darkest fantasies, I am in the position of an orthodontist, and I'm putting braces on a teenage girl. And she's feeling self-conscious, humiliated by the whole thing. It's very graphic. But then in the end, after she has the braces on her teeth, I come and say, well, actually, I think you're beautiful. And you have no need to be self-conscious, because you are stunning and wonderful. And I really like you just the way you are. And that's part of the fantasy. Now, usually it wouldn't last that long because there was already an orgasm before that. But if I let it play out, that's where it goes. So what am I doing? Who am I in the fantasy? Well, at first, I'm the violator. That's giving me safety over the ways that I was violated in my own mouth. But then it's also revealing some of the goodness of me, that I am a shame lifter. I am someone who comes to others in their deepest humiliation and says, I actually see you very different than the way you see yourself. I want to come close to you and affirm you, because to me, you're beautiful and you're lovable just the way you are. I mean, that's what I do.
Yeah,
that's what God's called me to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if we go even deeper, that's what I was trained to do from a young age, because my mom had very low self-esteem. And I was the one who would lift her up, try to make her feel better, give her the encouragement to keep going. And so I was put in that position inappropriately. And I had those fantasies of being a kind of hero. And in the sexual fantasy, it's hinting at that there's some way that is broken and beautiful where God has made me to be someone who can take away shame and humiliation because I know it so deeply and I've felt it.
All right. So thank you for that. Thank you for your vulnerability. This phrase, I've heard Christopher West use. He says the devil doesn't have his own clay. So he can only work with what the enemies or what God has made. The devil's not a creator. He's just
right.
And what strikes me about what you're sharing, Drew, that is so takes that to another deeper level is that the enemy doesn't just take clay and manipulate it into just anything. He really, I mean, what you just described, he really wants to take it and invert the good, twist it to do something at minimum to squelch the good and the glory.
Yeah.
And maybe one of his best strokes would be to actually turn that upside down. And I think your gentleness and curiosity and compassion around that fantasy taken to the end reveals this thing. I mean, right when you said, what you're describing, this orthodontist doing in this at the end of that fantasy, I'm like, well, that in the truest, most beautiful way, that's what you do for a living. That's just kind of like in these really sensitive places where people feel deep shame.
Yeah,
you are calling out beauty. I mean, even this, from shame to glory.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what you do. So anyway, that's really powerful. And I'm going to sit with that in my own kind of as I think about who was I in fantasy, and invite our listeners to that too. Something really good there.
Yeah, something can't be broken unless it's fundamentally good.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Lord.
Mm-hmm. And this is why the typical approach to sexual addiction falls short. In the shallow purity culture, the problem is you're the problem. Your behavior is the problem. When we go deeper into understanding trauma and addiction, it's like, okay, what happened to you? This is a problem. Then when we go deeper into more of the story-centered approach, on understanding our own goodness, then it's like, no, even before anything happened to you, there was a goodness, a beauty, and a strength. And the story of the gospel starts with that. It starts with creation, then sin. And now we're not replacing everything that was bad with something totally different. God is restoring what was already there.
Right. You came to seek and save that which is lost.
Yes.
Not to wipe it out.
Right.
And start over. I mean, we are a new creation, but he's seeking to save that which is lost. What does that mean if not to restore that original glory?
That glory, right? So glory is a good thing.
Yeah. Glory
is not a bad thing. And when we can maybe understand like what it was all along that God put in me that came out of my sexual fantasies, well, maybe I can get that safety and glory in a healthy way.
All right, let's get to that next time, while we also get to the third of those three areas that fantasy is trying to change. So we'll be back.